Hey, what's up, everybody? Today we are going to break down we're going to recap rather, the fight card that was headlined by Strickland and Imavov from last night. And honestly, there's been a lot of news that broke that I want to talk about first that really, in a lot of ways kind of overtook the fight card in a lot of ways, right? The biggest news is obviously in the UFC's heavyweight division, where it was announced that Francis Ngannou has been stripped of the title. He's released from the UFC, and Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane are scheduled to fight for the vacant heavyweight title on March 4th. I want to say it's the fucking 4th. I hope I have that right. Yeah, because 14 days till the 18th in UFC London. Yeah, March 4th, UFC 285, Ciryl Gane versus Jon Jones for the heavyweight title. And man, there's been a lot of speculation about what's going on with Ngannou's release, right? Because you got to think, Dana White said in the press conference that they offered Francis Ngannou more money than they'd have offered any heavyweight in history. This contract would have made him richer than Brock Lesnar, right? But I think this is my speculation, right? At least just putting things together from what I've seen from interviews with Ariel Helwani and stuff like that, right? If you listen to Francis Ngannou, he has said repeatedly, right, that he does not care about the money strictly. Like, he wants paid well, but I think what he wants is freedom and the ability to go do what he wants to do. And I think he saw Dana White and the UFC give Conor McGregor these special privileges to go box Floyd Mayweather. And I think he wants to fight in the UFC, but he wants the option to go pursue those things as well, right? And Dana White, this is what I was alluding to at the beginning, is framing it in the post-fight, or not in the post-fight interview. Yeah, I think he announced everything in the post-fight interview. At the presser, whatever, right? That he announced that Ngannou, basically, he framed it in a way that made it sound like Ngannou was seeking out lesser competition. I don't think that's what it is. I think Ngannou has a ton of fucking leverage, right? So you might see him sign with a lesser MMA organization, but I think the real reason that he's not re-signing with the UFC is because he wants to fucking box, right? I think he wants to explore those waters, make that money, and go up against some of the biggest names and get his names written in the history books in that regard, right? There's fights like Ngannou versus Deontay Wilder and Ngannou versus Tyson Fury that people are just they're just gonna want to see, because Ngannou is such a freak fucking athlete and his knockout power is outrageous, right? And I understand that we have seen this before when Conor transferred over and fought Floyd in boxing, right? I understand, but it gets different when you get a little bit bigger. I'm not by any means saying, even if you watch, I'm not saying Ngannou is going to go in there and finesse anybody, right? Even when you watch Deontay Wilder, who's probably one of the most impressive, maybe the most impressive knockout artist in boxing history, he throws his punches with a little bit more crispness than Ngannou does, right? Like, the way that Wilder throws his knockout blows is going to be cleaner than the way that Ngannou knocked out, like Alistair Overeem or Jairzinho Rozenstruik, for example, right? Like, you're not going to get away with that shit in boxing, some of the stuff that he can throw in MMA, where those openings are more readily available because of all the different variables you have to deal with. In boxing, it's not really like that. You're talking about specialists with their hands, specialists with footwork, and I think that really where he's going to be lacking in the footwork department when it comes to boxing, right? But he has the great equalizer, and he can fucking turn your lights out like that. All he has to do is touch you, right? And, there's the other side of this too, where this is disappointing because you kind of wanted to see Jon fight Ngannou, right? And this is how I felt about Jon Jones, even when he was at light heavyweight. And man, I just brought up Stephan Bonner the other day. Rest in peace to another legend, and Anthony Johnson. But I always wanted to see Anthony Johnson fight Jon Jones, not because I thought Anthony Johnson was going to beat him skill for skill, or that he was going to go out there and, like I said, like I said about Ngannou and some of these boxers, it wasn't like Anthony Johnson was going to go out and finesse Jon Jones, but he has that fucking option where he can turn the lights off on you if he connects, right? I wanted to see Jon deal with that and what that power did to him, and if it made him hesitate a little bit more. I don't think he's ever really fought a puncher like Anthony Johnson comparable to that in his career, and that fight was set up, never ended up happening, and then you thought, okay, when he goes up to heavyweight, here's another chance for a guy who all he really has to do is touch you. He doesn't have to be more technical than you. He doesn't have to beat you. Like we keep going back and forth between MMA and boxing, right? But speaking of stuff like a good example to look at is Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. When Tyson Fury, if you look at things, the technique, Fury is a better boxer, right? But Deontay Wilder just needs to land once. You just got to fuck up once against Deontay Wilder and he can put you out. The problem, though, is like when you look at a fight like Ngannou versus Tyson Fury, if you look at a boxing match like that, look at how hard it was for Deontay Wilder, who is a professional boxer. This is what he does, right? Look, and he's a power punch specialist. Look how hard it was for him to land something like that on Tyson Fury. Man, it's going to be tough for Ngannou to get there and close that space off, if I'm being honest. But that doesn't mean that he shouldn't, if he wants to go do that, it doesn't mean that he shouldn't go do it and try to make his money, right? It's not about whether he can do it. It's about whether people will pay to see it, and people will pay to see that. Like I said, it makes a difference when you are a bigger guy, and it's going to make a difference in the minds of the people. They'll think it's a little bit different. I think you can sell Francis Ngannou boxing, right? And you know that if he goes and signs with an organization like Bellator or PFL, Francis has the leverage for an organization like that. They're going to let him fight in MMA, but also go do whatever he wants. So I think based on like what I've seen from Ariel Helwani, it seems to be the freedom aspect. And I think that Ngannou is chasing his money and he wants to box. He wants to fight when he wants to fight, and he wants to box to make that fucking cheddar. Why wouldn't you? You get massive paydays, especially if you look at like what Jake Paul's doing and shit like that, right? Ton of money to be made. So I don't blame Francis Ngannou a bit if they're not letting him go. But on the other hand, if you're Dana White, I do understand his perspective. Like we tried this out once. We tried it with our biggest superstar. Not that Francis isn't a goddamn superstar, right? And I understand that the Conor treatment is not fair and that Francis wants that for himself. And after he beat Gon, he's in a really good bargaining position, right? He is the current champion. Like when he walks away, it does leave this like kind of gap, the kind of way that like, you know, when John Jones didn't hold the light heavyweight title, there was kind of that vacancy there. Like, yeah, but it's not John, right? Like even when DC held it, I fucking love DC. But when DC won the belt, I was like, but he didn't beat John, right? A lot of people at heavyweight are going to feel like, yeah, but he didn't beat Ngannou. That's how I kind of feel. Man, and it's like, especially because he rebounded and knocked out a guy like Stipe too. Like, man, I don't know. It's disappointing in a lot of ways, but I hope that Ngannou is able to pursue what he wants. And my guess is that he wants to pursue boxing in some form or fashion, and that's why things fell apart. I don't think it has anything to do with the money. He's going to get paid, you know, regardless. And you got to think, like, it can't strictly be just that Ngannou wants to go leave and fight over in PFL. Right? You got to get through the whole tournament, and then if you win the tournament, you make $1 million. Like, yeah, he's probably going to go over there and he could probably win that tournament, right? But all of that fighting to get to the tournament for $1 million, he would make $1 million fighting John Jones. No doubt about it. I guarantee they gave him enough money for all that. It's just, I think it strictly boils down to him not having the liberty to leave and box, and I think he wants to box.